you can make authentic Hungarian paprika at home. I have 6 varieties of Hungarian peppers, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Join me today as I show you how I make paprika, including smoked paprika. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and I've been waiting for this day for almost a year. I've made many pepper powders before, from cayenne peppers and fermented chili peppers, but this year I specifically grew Hungarian varieties so that I could make a pepper powder as close to an authentic Hungarian paprika as I think a gardener can do. The specific varieties I'll be working with today are the Lesia pepper, the black Hungarian pepper, the Padron hot pepper, Hungarian paprika pepper, an Alma paprika pepper, and a Ferrer Ozon paprika pepper. You don't have to use Hungarian varieties. I'm a gardener. I wanted to grow these, and these are all something I've never grown before. You could make a paprika with whatever pepper you have. If you want a sweet powder, use something like a bell pepper. If you want a spicy powder, use something like jalapeno or poblano. You can blend the different peppers to get different taste profiles, and that's exactly what I'm going to do today. If you're unsure of whether the pepper is sweet or spicy, well, I suggest you go ahead and taste it before you make your paprika. This Lesia is pretty sweet, very tasty. It's considered one of the sweetest Hungarian peppers. This black Hungarian can be used as a substitute for jalapenos. This one has a little bit of heat. As they ripen, they'll tend to get a little hotter. By recognizing which ones are sweet and which ones are hot, before you even think about making your paprika, you can already come up with an idea of how you might want to blend them to get a sweet paprika or a spicy paprika. I've divided my peppers into 2 groups. These are all of the sweet peppers, and these are all of the spicy peppers. The process for making paprika is pretty straightforward. We're going to dry these peppers and then grind them into a powder. You can dry the peppers whole, and these hotter peppers tend to have a thin wall, and so in just the week or so since I harvested these peppers, you can see that they're already drying. The peppers with thicker walls, particularly the sweet peppers, don't air dry as well. At home, you run an increased risk of developing mold and the pepper even rotting by letting it air dry. So to hasten the process and avoid those potential problems, I'm going to dehydrate these peppers. We could put a whole pepper into a dehydrator, but this big sweet pepper is going to take a long time to dry. To make it most efficient, I'm going to go ahead and cut the pepper into smaller pieces. After cutting the stem top off, I'll begin by cutting the pepper in half. Now, the classic sweet paprika does not have the seeds in it. The seeds can actually affect the flavor of the paprika, so I'm removing the seeds. I can put these big halves in the dehydrator at this point, but to make it go a little bit faster, I'll cut them into slightly smaller pieces. And these are what I'll put into the dehydrator. The spiciness of these hotter peppers tends to mask any bitterness that might come from the seeds. But I want the purest pepper flavor, so with these as well, I'm going to go ahead and remove as many of the seeds as I can. If some of the seeds remain after cleaning out the inside, that's okay. But I'll scrape and shake, and what I'm looking for is a mostly clean pepper. If you have sensitive skin, some of these hotter peppers might irritate your hands. By all means, wear food-grade gloves to help out while you cut the peppers. After having done a couple of them, my fingers are tingling a little bit, but it's not unbearable. So I'll continue cutting these peppers, removing the seeds, and getting them ready to go in the dehydrator. With all the peppers cut, I'll be back. After a lot of cutting and de-seeding, I now have 4 pounds of sweet peppers and 2 pounds of the hotter peppers ready to go into the dehydrator. I also have a blend of the sweet and the hot to go into my smoker. I have my smoker set at its lowest setting, which for this model is 180 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not looking to cook the peppers. I want to smoke the peppers. So I'll go ahead and set the tray in. If I could go a little lower, I would, but this should give them a nice smoky flavor. I'll come back and check on them in about 2 hours. It should take about 2 to 3 hours to really get a good smoke infusion with these peppers. With the peppers in the smoker, now I'll go ahead and start loading the trays for the dehydrator. Now, I'm doing this separately. When you dry the smoked peppers, as I'll need to do to make the powder, a lot of that smoke flavor is released into the dehydrator, which means it will also tend to flavor the other peppers or any other food that you might have dehydrating at the same time. So I'm going to do that separately. I'll finish these hot and sweet together, but I'll take these out once they're fully dry and then put the smoked peppers in. All I'm doing for this phase is to put these peppers on the drying rack. I will put them relatively close together, but to have them dry completely, I don't want any of these pieces touching each other. And these are pretty thick sweet peppers, so I can expect that these will take much longer to dry than the hot peppers, but I'll still be able to do them all together. I'll just have to check periodically and take the peppers out when they're fully dry. This worked out perfectly. My London Sunshine Dehydrator has 6 trays, and I was able to put about 1 pound of the peppers on each of the trays. So there's 4 trays of the sweet peppers and 2 trays of the hot peppers. Now I'll go ahead and set the temperature to be 130 degrees, and I'll go ahead and set the time for 10 hours for now, but I'll be checking it on a much more regular basis. It'll probably take 4 or 5 hours, but we'll have to wait and see. And then I'll go ahead and get it started. And now we just sit back and wait for the peppers to dry. When the dehydrating process is complete, the result is dried peppers. It's easy to tell when the peppers are completely dry because they will snap easily. If they bend at all, they're not dry. This is what you're checking for during the process of dehydrating the peppers. And so these thin-walled hot peppers took about 5 hours to be completely dry, pretty close to my estimate. At that same 5-hour point, these thick-walled peppers weren't even close to being dry. So I cut them into smaller pieces and put them back into the dehydrator. And how long did it take for these to be completely dry? Well, at the 15-hour point, they were mostly dry, but there were still some soft pieces. I put them back in for a couple more hours, ended up being a total of almost 18 hours for all of these peppers to be completely dry. You don't realize how much water is in a thick-walled pepper until you go through the dehydrating process. Now, these smoked peppers took much less time, even the thick-walled ones. And part of that reason is because they were partially dried out in the smoker. I smoked them for 3 hours. That's the point that I actually tasted some of these peppers, removed them from the smoker, and then put them into the dehydrator. And now they're all perfectly dry. These smoked peppers were in the dehydrator for 8 hours to reach this point. With all of my peppers dry, now it's time to make my paprika powder. I find the easiest way to do that is with an herb grinder. Now, you could also use a coffee grinder. I find that to be the easiest method, one of these tools that are designed to grind to a small powder. You can use a food processor. I don't think that works as well. You can try a blender. I haven't had any success with that. The process is easy. I'm just going to drop a bunch of these peppers into the grinder, put the top on, and I like this one. I've got a link to it in the description below because all you do is just push on it to start the grind. The longer you press it, the finer the grind is going to be. And some of it has already turned into a little cloud of paprika vapor. It's a beautiful color of paprika. I'll stir it up a little bit to see if there's any chunks, but it's all very well ground. I really like the way this has turned out. I'm going to go ahead and grind up the other two, and then we'll do a taste test and start thinking about making our paprika blend. The results are fantastic. Look at this vibrant color. You can probably tell from the color which is which. The light orange is the sweet paprika. The darker orange will be the spicy paprika. And this darkest of all is the smoked paprika. When a food looks this good, you have to assume that it's going to taste great. So let's do the taste now. Let's go ahead and start with the sweet paprika powder. Oh, that's incredible. It is sweet. It has a nice pepper flavor to it, probably not surprising. Oh, that's wonderful. I've actually never had a paprika that was as sweet as this. How about the spicy paprika now? Oh, there it comes. At first I didn't think it had much spice, but oh yeah, it's really settling in now. That's good. Much more depth of flavor than like a cayenne powder. That's really good. And so now the smoked was a blend of the hot peppers and the sweet peppers that I smoked and then ground together. So let's give this a try. Oh, that's fantastic. Easily, the smoked is going to be my favorite. Oh, I am very happy with the results of this. Now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the possibility of doing some blends. The sweet powder had good flavor and not much heat, so I'm going to start with a few spoons of this. The spicy pepper really was quite spicy, so I'm just going to put a dash of that in. And then the smoke flavor is pretty subtle. I'll put a dash of that as well. And then I'll mix it all up and we'll see how this tastes. Mixing the lighter and the darker colors has made for a slightly darker paprika. Let's go ahead and taste this now. Oh, that's really good. So it has the sweetness of the first powder, and then a delayed heat that comes in, but very subtly from the hot pepper. And then a little bit of smokiness. So you can see when you take the effort and grow or use different types of peppers, you can create a paprika powder that perfectly fits your desires, your preferences. This is really good. I think I might add just a little bit of heat because I tend to like a slightly spicier paprika. The original flavor is very nice. I'll add a little bit more smoke too. And I think this will be the first of the paprikas that I put into a bottle. When it comes to bottling your paprika, you can use whatever you want. I have these little jars that I'll be using so I can give some of it away as a gift. I also have these bottles that I like. They come with a top that actually allows you to sprinkle it on your food. And I've even saved my paprika bottle from the last one that I bought, and I'll reuse this for these powders. This is all the grinding that I'm going to do today. As with most spices that you'll have in your cabinet, the taste will degrade over time. So I'm going to go ahead and bag up all of these dried peppers, and then I'll grind them as I need them. The flavor is retained better when the peppers remain intact than when they do powdered. But there's a lot of paprika here. Even though it lost a lot of volume, 1 pound of peppers gave me 3 ounces of powder. The flavor is really condensed in that powder, and the flavor just explodes. Now, this is the method that most people will be using, but there's another way of doing this that I actually prefer. While the other peppers were in the dehydrator, I had another batch that was in my freeze dryer. And these are completely dry and ready for grinding. The freeze dryer makes the process extremely easy. I did cut these pieces just to fit on the tray a little better, but I didn't cut them into small pieces. I left them pretty large, and they're still perfectly dry. You put them in the freeze dryer and then just wait until they're done. You don't have to check every hour like these others to see what their level of dryness is. And the color is much more vibrant than the color you get during the dehydrating process. Some vitamins are actually retained in the freeze drying process that are lost in the dehydrating process. Regardless of which way you go, you're going to end up with dried peppers that allow you to make a wonderful paprika. I'm going to go ahead and bag up all the rest of these, and I'll have paprika throughout the year. These will be bottled, some will be given away, some I'll definitely use for myself. A year ago, I wanted to make paprika, and I did. It was a lengthy process, but well worth it. If you want to see some of the other things I've done with my peppers, watch one of these videos next. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening and making paprika.